Hello again. Well, today I'm at Moyes Hall in Bury St Edmunds in the county of Suffolk. The museum contains some rather grisly exhibits and relics relating to a rather notorious murder. Let's go inside, shall we? Now, Moyes Hall dates from the 12th century. It's had a colourful history. It's been a workhouse and a prison, and it's been a museum since 1899 with all kinds of interesting exhibits. But it's the murder room that I've come to see, and here we are. I know I've seen one of these before. It's called a Mort safe. Popular in the early 19th century, it was an iron cage that protected graves from grave robbers, or the resurrectionists as they were known. Here's a variety of weapons used against poachers in the 18th and 19th century. This trap, it's called the Iron Wolf. Its razor sharp teeth would tear your leg to shreds. This is a bit more humane. It would just break your leg. These are various lucky charms to protect against witchcraft. Certain objects were concealed in the walls and chimney stacks of houses. Shoes, for example. And witch bottles. Now, these bottles often contained pins, nails, and sometimes urine. And of course, mummified cats. Now, a form of punishment that's always fascinated me is the gibbet cage. This is the Honington gibbet. Now, I've just been reading about this gibbet. It's a gruesome tale, so I will tell you the history of the Honington gibbet. On the evening of Saturday the 14th of September 1794, Sarah Nichols walked from her home to the Fox public house here in the village of Honington to buy a bag of flour. At around 10 o'clock the next morning, William Pendle, the landlord of the Fox, found Sarah's battered body lying in a ditch on the Thetford Lane. She had been bludgeoned with a hedge stake and strangled with her own garter. This shocking crime was rendered more shocking when it was found that she'd been murdered by her own father and brother. Dozens of witnesses gave evidence against her murderers, and despite salacious rumours, no real motive for the crime could be found, and both men remained stoic and unrepentant throughout the trial. As he passed sentence, the judge addressed 59-year-old John Nichols and said, "The murder you have committed is of a most aggravated and extraordinary nature. That a father should aid and abet his own son in murdering a daughter is an instance of depravity I have never before witnessed in the office I now hold, and I sincerely hope I never shall again. I shall now proceed to pass the sentence of the Lord, which is that you be taken to the place from whence you came, and from thence the day after tomorrow to the place of execution, and there respectively hanged by the neck until you are dead, after which your bodies are to be delivered to the surgeons for dissection, and the Lord have mercy on your souls." They were hanged on Wednesday the 26th of March near the North Gate at Bury St Edmunds. Afterwards, John Nichols' body was hung up to rot in this cage at a place known as Gibbet Covert, and the body of his son Nathan was dissected by surgeons, and then the flesh was boiled from his bones. After rotting on the gibbet, John Nichols' body is said to have fallen to pieces, and part of the gibbet was made into a bridge over a dyke at Honington. However, in 1937, during the building of a new aerodrome, the gibbet cage was unearthed with the skeleton of the murderous John Nichol still inside. And apparently he was still wearing his boots. Now I don't know what they did with the skeleton. I presume it was buried somewhere, but for a time the gibbet cage used to hang from the ceiling by the front door of the museum. Now this is what I've come here to see. These are the relics from the notorious murder in the Red Barn at the village of Polstead in 1827. The story has been dramatised for the theatre, radio, TV, but before we look at the relics, I will take you to the picturesque village of Polstead, the scene of the murder in the Red Barn. The murder of Maria Martin here in the village of Polstead in 1827 was one of the first murders to catch the imagination of the public. It had all the ingredients of a grisly melodrama. An innocent female victim, her murderer a wicked young squire, and the stepmother whose dreams of Maria's ghost led to the discovery of her body beneath the floor of the Red Barn. This cottage was once the home of 24-year-old Maria Martin, the daughter of the village mole catcher. In the March of 1826, she started an affair with 22-year-old William Corder, the son of a local farmer. Maria had 2 illegitimate children from 2 different fathers, one of whom was William's elder brother Thomas, who had since drowned after falling through the ice in the village pond. William Corder had a reputation as a fraudster and a womanizer, but he was from an affluent middle-class family, so he wished to keep his meetings with the lowly Maria Martin a secret. However, their clandestine relationship was threatened with exposure when Maria once again fell pregnant, and she pressed William to marry her. She gave birth to their child in 1827, but it died soon afterwards, and it has been suggested that the death of the infant may not have been natural. By now, William was dragging his feet over their marriage plans. However, on Saturday, the 18th of May, 1827, and in the presence of her stepmother, Anne Martin, Corder suggested that Maria should meet him at the Red Barn, a local landmark where he proposed that they should elope to Ipswich. He told her they should make haste because a local constable had obtained a warrant for her arrest on charges of bearing illegitimate children, and because of this she should disguise herself in men's clothing before meeting him at the barn. Several days later, however, Corder returned to the village alone, and Maria Martin was never seen alive again. Naturally, questions were asked about her whereabouts, and he claimed that she was in Ipswich, which he couldn't return yet, he said, for fear of provoking anger in the village. But when suspicions were aroused, Corder fled, and he later wrote to Maria's family claiming that they were now happily married and living on the Isle of Wight. However, Maria's stepmother began talking of vivid dreams that Maria had been murdered and buried in the Red Barn. So persistent were the dreams that she persuaded her husband to go to the barn and dig in one of the grain storage bins, where he quickly uncovered the remains of his daughter buried in a sack. Although she was badly decomposed, she was still recognizable. and Corder's green handkerchief wrapped around the neck of the body clearly implicated him in the crime. Corder was arrested at Everley Grove House in Brentford, West London, which for the past 8 months he and his new wife Mary ran as a ladies' boarding house. A search of the premises revealed a brace of pistols, one of which was thought to be the murder weapon, and he was taken back to Suffolk, where he was tried at Shire Hall, Bury St Edmunds. Due to advanced decomposition, Mariah's exact cause of death could not be ascertained, so Corder was charged with 9 counts of murder, which included shooting, strangling, stabbing, and burying alive. When instructed, the jury retired and spent barely an hour of discussion before finding Corder guilty. On the 11th of August 1828, he was hanged at Bury St Edmunds in front of a crowd of over 7,000 spectators. Just before his execution, he addressed the crowd and said, "I am guilty. My sentence is just. I deserve my fate, and may God have mercy on my soul." After an hour, his body was cut down and taken back to Shire Hall, where it was slit open along the abdomen and the skin folded back to reveal the muscles. It was put on public display before being dissected in front of an audience of students from Cambridge University. After Corder was dissected at the West Suffolk Hospital, the surgeon, George Creed, made the binding for a rather macabre book. This book is actually bound in William Corder's skin. The inscription reads, "The binding of this book is the skin of the murderer William Corder, taken from his body and tanned by myself in the year 1828. And here is his scalp. If you look closely, you can just see his ear. Those 2 pistols belonged to William Corder, and one of them is the murder weapon with which he shot Mariah in the neck, and the bullet came out of her eye. And this is the man himself. This is the death mask of William Corder, taken shortly after his execution. Now, this is not how he would have appeared in life. His nose and mouth are very swollen, and these are the side effects of hanging. Now, Corder's skeleton was put on display in a glass case in West Suffolk Hospital, but in 2004 one of his ancestors obtained permission to have it cremated in a private ceremony in London. But what of his victim, Mariah Martin? Well, she was buried in Polstead churchyard, but she was not left to rest in peace. The crime so captured the public's imagination that people from all over the country descended from this sleepy Suffolk village, and souvenir hunters chipped away at Mariah's gravestone until nothing remained. Near this place lie the remains of Mariah Martin, who died in the Red Barn, Polstead, and was buried on April 20th, 1828, aged 25 years, R.I.P. Well, that faded sign is the only memorial to Mariah Martin. I don't think anyone knows the exact location of her grave. And just a stone's throw away are the graves of the Corder family. This is the grave of William Corder's parents. His Mother Mary and Father John. Now, unfortunately, I can't visit the notorious Red Barn because, like the grave, it was destroyed by souvenir hunters and what remained burnt down in 1842. Its exact location is hard to find, but it was situated on a hill at the top of Martin's Lane, not far from Maria Martin's cottage. Now, apart from Maria's ghost appearing in dreams to her stepmother, there aren't any local ghost stories connected to the case, at least none that I'm aware of. However, it is said that when Corder's skeleton was put on display in West Suffolk Hospital, it was rigged with a mechanism that made its arm point to the collection box when approached. One night, a Dr. John Kilner removed the skull and replaced it with another one. He wanted Corder's skull to add to his collection of Red Barn memorabilia. After he brought the skull home, he was plagued by strange sounds and ghostly apparitions. Believing the skull was cursed, he gave it to a man named Hopkins, who was subjected to the same hauntings. Eventually, they paid to give the skull a Christian burial, after which the hauntings ceased. This is Martin's Lane, as it became known after the murder, and this pink cottage on my right is where Maria Martin was born on the 25th of July 1801. Now, I'm not going to stand and film, obviously someone lives there, but a quick over the shoulder will suffice. Preceding Jack the Ripper, a murder in the Red Barn was the most famous murder of the 19th century. It was the subject of melodramas, penny dreadfuls, folk songs, and later film, radio and TV adaptations. And I have fond memories of my parents taking me to see a stage production of Murder in the Red Barn when I was very young. It had everything my ghoulish 8-year-old self could want. A murder, execution and a ghost thrown in for good measure. So it's a thrill for me to visit the beautiful village of Polstead, the place where it all happened. Well, that was my look at the gruesome history behind some of the exhibits here at Moyers Hall in Bury St Edmunds. And I've been so lucky to have this place all to myself. Now, before I go, as usual, if you have made it this far, then thank you very much. Take care, and I do hope you will join me for the next one.